In episode 6 of House of the Dragon, we timeskip over a decade into the future to after the birth of Rhaenyra, Alicent, and Daemon's children. This video will catch you up on everything that happened following the events of Laenor and Rhaenyra's wedding ceremony in 114 AC, or the end of episode 5. Sir Laenor returned to Driftmark thereafter, leaving many to wonder if his marriage had ever been consummated. The princess remained at court, surrounded by her friends and admirers. Sir Criston Cole was not amongst them, having gone over entirely to the Queen's party, the Greens. But the massive and redoubtable Breakbones, or Broken Bones as Mushroom had it, filled his place, becoming the foremost of the Blacks, ever at Rhaenyra's side at feast and ball and hunt. Her husband raised no objections. Sir Laenor preferred the comforts of High Tide, where he soon found a new favourite in a household knight named Sir Karl Corey. Thereafter, though he joined his wife for important court events where his presence was expected, Sir Laenor spent most of his days apart from the princess. Septon Eustace says they shared a bed no more than a dozen times. Mushroom concurs, but adds that Karl Corey oft shared that bed as well. It aroused the princess to watch the men disporting with one another, he tells us, and from time to time the two would include her in their pleasures. Yet Mushroom contradicts himself, for elsewhere in his testimony, he claims that the princess would leave her husband with his lover on such nights, and seek her own solace in the arms of Harwin Strong. Whatever the truth of these tales, it was soon announced that the princess was with child, born in the waning days of 114 AC. The boy was a large, strapping lad, with brown hair, brown eyes, and a pug nose. Sir Laenor had the aquiline nose, silver white hair, and purple eyes that bespoke his Valyrian blood. Laenor's wish to name the child Joffrey was overruled by his father, Lord Corlys. Instead, the child was given a traditional Valyrian name, Jacaerys. Friends and brothers would call him Jace. The court was still rejoicing over the birth of the princess's child when her stepmother, Queen Alicent, also went into labour, delivering Viserys, his third son, Daeron, whose colouring, unlike that of Jace, testified to his dragon blood. By royal command, the infants Jacaerys, Velaryon, and Daeron Targaryen shared a wet nurse until weaned. It was said that the king hoped to prevent any enmity between the two boys by raising them as milk brothers. If so, his hopes proved to be sadly forlorn. A year later, in 115 AC, there came a tragic mishap of the sort that shapes the destiny of kingdoms. The bronze bitch of Runestone, Lady Rhea Royce, fell from her horse whilst hawking and cracked her skull upon a stone. She lingered for 9 days before finally feeling well enough to leave her bed, only to collapse and die within an hour of rising. A raven was duly sent to Storm's End, and Lord Baratheon dispatched a messenger by ship to Bloodstone, where Prince Daemon was still struggling to defend his meagre kingdom against the men of the Triarchy and their Dornish allies. Daemon flew at once for the Vale, to put my wife to rest, he said, though more like it was in the hopes of laying claim to her lands, castles, and incomes. In that, he failed. Runestone passed instead to Lady Rhea's nephew, and when Daemon made appeal to the Eyrie, not only was his claim dismissed, but Lady Jean warned him that his presence in the Vale was unwelcome. Flying back to the Stepstones afterwards, Prince Daemon landed at Driftmark to make a courtesy call upon his erstwhile partner in conquest, the Sea Snake, and his wife, the Princess Rhaenys. High Tide was one of the few places in the Seven Kingdoms where the king's brother could be confident he would not be turned away. There, his eye fell upon Lord Corlys' daughter, Laena, a maid of 22, tall, slender, and surprisingly lovely. Even Mushroom was taken with her beauty, writing that she was almost as pretty as her brother. With a great mane of silver gold ringlets that fell down past her waist, Laena had been betrothed from the age of 12 to a son of the Sea Lord of Braavos. But the father had died before they could be wed, and the son soon proved a wastrel and a fool, squandering his family's wealth and power before turning up on Driftmark. Lacking a graceful means to rid himself of the embarrassment, but unwilling to proceed with the marriage, Lord Corlys had repeatedly postponed the wedding. Prince Daemon fell in love with Laena, the singers would have us believe. Men of a more cynical bent believe the prince saw her as a way to check his own descent. Once seen as his brother's heir, he had fallen far down in the line of succession, and neither the Greens nor the Blacks had a place for him. But House Valyrian was powerful enough to defy both parties with impunity. Wary of the Stepstones, and free at last of his bronze bitch, Daemon Targaryen asked Lord Corlys for his daughter's hand in marriage. The exiled Braavosi betrothed remained an impediment, but not for long. Daemon mocked him to his face so savagely, the boy had no choice but to call him to defend his word with steel. Armed with Darksister, the prince made short work of his rival, and wed Lady Lana Valyrion a fortnight later, abandoning his hardscrabble kingdom on the Stepstones. 5 other men followed him as the kings of the Narrow Sea, until the brief and bloody history of that savage sellsword kingdom ended for good and all. Prince Daemon knew that his brother would not be pleased when he heard of his marriage. Prudently, the prince and his new bride took themselves far from Westeros soon after the wedding, crossing the Narrow Sea on their dragons. Some said they flew to Valyria in defiance of the curse that hung over that smoking wasteland, to search out the secrets of the Dragon Lords of the old freehold. Mushroom himself reports this as fact in his testimony, but we have abundant evidence that the truth was less romantic. Prince Daemon and Lady Laena flew first to Pentos, where they were feted by the city's prince. The Pentoshi feared the growing power of the Triarchy to the south, and saw Daemon as a valuable ally against the 3 daughters. From there, they crossed the disputed lands to Old Volantis, where they enjoyed a similar warm welcome. Then they flew up the Rhoyne to visit Qohor and Norvos. In those cities, far removed from the woes of Westeros and the power of the Triarchy, their welcome was less rapturous. Everywhere else they went, however, huge crowds turned out for a glimpse of Vhagar and Caraxes. The Dragon Riders were once again in Pentos when Lady Laena learned she was with child. Eschewing further flight, Prince Daemon and his wife settled in a manse outside the city walls as a guest of a Pentoshi magister, until such time as the babe was born. Meanwhile, back in Westeros, Princess Rhaenyra had given birth to a second son, late in the year 115 AC. The child was named Lucarius, Luke for short. Septon Eustace tells us that both Sir Laenor and Sir Harwin were at Rhaenyra's bedside for his birth. Like his brother Jace, Luke had brown eyes and a healthy head of brown hair, rather than the silver gilt hair of Targaryen princelings. But he was a large and lusty lad, and King Viserys was delighted with him when the child was presented at court. These feelings were not shared by his queen. "Do keep trying," Queen Alicent told Sir Laenor. According to Mushroom, soon or late you may get one who looks like you, and the rivalry between the Greens and Blacks grew deeper, finally reaching the point where the queen and the princess could scarce suffer each other's presence. Thereafter, Queen Alicent kept to the Red Keep, whilst the princess spent her days on Dragonstone, attended by her ladies, Mushroom, and her champion, Sir Harwin Strong. Her husband, Sir Laenor, was said to visit frequently. In 116 AC, in the free city of Pentos, Lady Laena gave birth to twin daughters, Prince Daemon's first true-born children. Prince Daemon named the girls Baela, after his father, and Rhaena, after her mother. The babes were small and sickly, alas, but both had fine features, silver white hair and purple eyes. When they were half a year old and stronger, the girls and their mothers sailed to Driftmark, whilst Daemon flew ahead with both dragons. From Hightide, he sent a raven to his brother in King's Landing, informing his grace of the birth of his nieces, and begging leave to present the girls at court to receive his royal blessing. Though his hand and small council argued heatedly against it, Viserys consented, for the king still loved the brother who had been the companion of his youth. "Daemon is a father now," he told Grand Maester Melos. "He will have changed." Thus were the sons of Baelon Targaryen reconciled for the second time. In 117 AC, on Dragonstone, Princess Rhaenyra bore yet another son. Sir Laenor was at last permitted to name a child after his fallen friend. Sir Joffrey Lonmouth. Joffrey Valerion was as big and red-faced and healthy as his brothers, but like them, he had brown eyes, brown hair, and features that some at court called common. The whispering began again amongst the Greens. It was an article of faith that the father of Rhaenyra's sons was not her husband, Laenor, but her champion, Harwin Strong. Mushroom says as much in his testimony, and Grand Maester Mellos hints at it, while Septon Eustace raises the rumours only to dismiss them. Whatever the truth of these allegations, there was never any doubt that King Viserys still meant for his daughter to follow him upon the Iron Throne, and her sons to follow her in turn. By royal decree, each of the Valyrian boys was presented with a dragon's egg whilst in the cradle. Those who doubted the paternity of Rhaenyra's sons whispered that the eggs would never hatch, but the birth in turn of 3 young dragons gave the lie to their words. The hatchlings were named Vermax, Arax, and Triax. And Septon Eustace tells us that his grace sat Jace upon his knee atop the Iron Throne as he was holding court, and was heard to say, "One day, this will be your seat, lad." Childbirth exacted a toll on the princess. The weight that Rhaenyra gained during her pregnancies never entirely left her, and by the time her youngest boy was born, she had grown stout and thick of waist. The beauty of her girlhood, a fading memory, though she was but 20 years of age. According to Mushroom, this only served to deepen her resentment of her stepmother, Queen Alicent, who remained slender and graceful at half again her age. The sins of the father are oft visited on the sons, wise men have said, and so it is for the sins of mothers as well. The enmity between Queen Alicent and Princess Rhaenyra was passed on to their sons, and the Queen's 3 boys, the Princes Aegon, Aemond, and Daeron, grew to be bitter rivals of their Valyrian nephews, resentful of them for having stolen what they regarded as their birthright, the Iron Throne itself. Though all 6 boys attended the same feasts, balls, and revels, and sometimes trained together in the yard under the same master-at-arms, and studied under the same maesters, this enforced closeness only served to feed their mutual mislike, rather than binding them together as brothers. Whilst Princess Rhaenyra misliked her stepmother, Queen Alicent, she became fond and more than fond of her good sister, Lady Laena. With Driftmark and Dragonstone so close, Daemon and Laena oft visited with the princess, and her with them. Many a time they flew together on their dragons, and the princess's she-dragon, Syrax, produced several clutches of eggs. In 118 AC, with the blessing of King Viserys, Rhaenyra announced the betrothal of her 2 eldest sons to the daughters of Prince Daemon and Lady Laena. Jacaerys was 4 and Lucerys 3, the girls 2. And in 119 AC, when Laena found she was with child again, Rhaenyra flew to Driftmark to attend her during the birth. And so it was that the princess was at her good sister's side on the 3rd day of the accursed year 120 AC, the year of the Red Spring. A day and a night of labour left Lady Valyrion pale and weak, but finally she gave birth to the son Prince Daemon had so long desired. But the babe was twisted and malformed, and died within the hour. Nor did his mother long survive him. Her grueling labour had drained all of Lady Laena's strength, and grief weakened her still further, making her helpless before the onset of childbed fever. As her condition steadily worsened, despite the best efforts of Driftmark's young maester, Prince Daemon flew to Dragonstone and brought back Princess Rhaenyra's own maester, an older and more experienced man renowned for his skills as a healer. Sadly, Maester Geradas came too late. After 3 days of delirium, Lady Laena passed from this mortal coil. She was but 27. During her final hour, it is said, Lady Laena rose from her bed, pushed away the scepters praying over her, and made her way from her room, intent on reaching Vhagar, that she might fly one last time before she died. Her strength failed her on the tower steps, however, and it was there she collapsed and died. Her husband, Prince Daemon, carried her back to her bed. Afterward, Mushroom tells us, Princess Rhaenyra sat vigil with him over Lady Laena's corpse, and comforted him in his grief. Anyway, this was a really great episode of House of the Dragon, and we can't wait to make more videos on the differences between show and book. In the meantime, check out our playlist on every chapter of A Game of Thrones Explained, and our entire A Feast for Dragons book, Explained. Also, when you get the chance, try out Fantasy Flight's A Game of Thrones board game, digital edition.